Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to today's episode of The Culture with Farajii Muhammad. I'm Suzette Speaks, sitting in for Farajii, but he hopefully will be joining us in just a moment. We have a wonderful lineup of show up for a show today. We're going to start with the May unemployment numbers. Why? Because we have seen an increase in unemployment for Black Americans. We're going to talk about why. Then we are going to go to the latest person who has announced their intent to run in the 2024 presidential election. Academician, theologian, civil rights activist, and social critic Cornel West has joined the race. Will he be a disruptor or a spoiler? Let's talk about it. Then we're going to move to a case out of Florida, y'all. I want you to pay attention to what's going on in Ocala. We've seen a recent arrest in a case where a young mother went to knock on her neighbor's door after having a dispute with her children, and the neighbor pulled the trigger and shot her, killing her through the doorway. We're going to talk about that case of Ajike Owens. We're going to pay attention to what's going on in Florida. And finally, Cardi B wants the fame to be over. She's talking about why she wants to go back to normal life. We're going to talk with a special guest about the price of fame. Get ready, y'all. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. So to begin today's show, I want to welcome everybody. Please leave your comments in the chat. We love to hear from you, the Culture Crew. But we're going to start out today's show talking about unemployment numbers and how they have disproportionately affected Black Americans, particularly in this case, Black women. Usually, y'all, when we hear about unemployment, we hear about the ongoing trend which affects Black men. But in the recent May numbers that were just released, we are seeing an uptick for female Black women unemployment. And we'll talk a little bit about why. Let's go to our slide and take a look at what the numbers are actually saying. So the increases in Black unemployment are especially dire for Black women. And the article reads, the unemployment rate increased for Black people from April to May from 4.7% to 5.6%, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. In February, unemployment rates among Black workers hit their lowest levels in more than a year. So we're seeing a reverse in the trend, narrowing the gap with white workers. However, while the overall rate of job losses in the Black workforce increased, Black women were the most affected, specifically those who work in the public sector, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Their unemployment rate increased from 4.4% in April to 5.3% in May. Because Black workers make up about 13% of the labor force, the unemployment numbers among Black women in May significantly increased the overall unemployment rate, said Michelle Holder, an associate professor of economics at John Jay College at City University in New York. Now, we have to take a closer look at this, folks, and I want to hear your comments because there are real world implications when we see these numbers. Oftentimes when we see, 5.6%, it sounds kind of small, but compared to the population of African Americans here in the United States, it's actually quite large of a jump for Black Americans. And we are seeing these increases not only in the public sector. I was looking up where we find a lot of our Black female workers, and they also are disproportionately affected because they are also working in areas, such as retail, tourism, and other service industry jobs that had kind of recovered, as we said in this article, as we saw in this article from the beginning of this year, post-pandemic. But now we're seeing a reversal, which can be very, very problematic. Why? Because unemployment affects Black families. We have to think about the incomes that are being lost. And over time, this tends to have a disproportionate effect on family life, on children, on opportunities for the future. So we'll go to a quick quote. I see it here. Thank you. Male unemployment rates, I see in our chat, also have increased. For Black men, the unemployment rate increased from 4.5% to 5.6%. And again, we're not only thinking about with this new data, the job loss and, of course, the monetary loss, but we also have to consider the mental health impacts. Sometimes where we are not seeing families living up to their full potential, what happens to individuals who are not able to earn a living? Oftentimes, it can be very, very difficult in terms of their mental health. And then what we see is sometimes there is a drop off and people stop applying for jobs and drop out of the job market altogether. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what is happening with the May unemployment numbers, because again, they say that when America, catches a cold, Black America catches pneumonia. So we don't want to see this trend, move any higher. And of course, we have to keep the Biden administration accountable for what they can do, because President Biden has in the past touted how much unemployment has been improving since the pandemic for African Americans. But again, now we're seeing in just this last month, somewhat of a loss of ground for Black women, especially, but for Black women and Black men. Let's see what you guys have to say in the chat. Again, welcome everybody, Culture Crew. Let's see this quote, the level of economic insecurity that we're seeing. We can put up that quote from our panel or from the chat, please. And we will close out this segment shortly. I want to make sure we leave enough time for our following segments. Let's see. So we have a quote here that according to, and we can go ahead and put that quote, the Director of Economic Policy Institute program, the Director of Economic Policy Institute's program on race, ethnicity, and economy, Valerie Wilson, said that, and we can put her quote up, that the level of economic insecurity, I think, feeds into more harmful impacts on feeds on the more harmful impacts. I'm reading on our script notes, y'all. It's easier when it's on the screen. Impacts of job loss when you don't have another earner, this is it, in your household. And then there's a significant savings to sort of fill in that loss of income. And if there are insignificant savings to sort of fill out through that loss of income, you got to basically try to survive before you can find the next job. What does that mean? You're burning through your savings. You are taking a lot of credit out. And again, it's putting Black people back, right, in terms of their economic prowess. If you were using lines of credit, if you were using up your savings and there is no new income coming in, we know that our community already is at a wealth gap. This type of data also puts us at a far more disadvantage in terms of this economic recovery post-pandemic, but in terms of closing the wealth gap as a whole going forward. We'll take a couple more quotes from you. If you want to leave a comment about the new data that we have been seeing in terms of the unemployment rate from April to May and why there has been an increase, almost a percentage point, in terms of the unemployment among Black women and Black men, and why that is significant and what we can do about it, please go ahead and leave your comments. And let's see. They say that experts said overall unemployment rate for Black people has been declining since 2020. So it is a real interest to many who are seeing these new numbers as to why. Why is it now that we are seeing this sudden reversal, and what impacts will it have? Yeah, let's see. Thank you, Tawana Williams. I see your comment. Thank you so much. Culture Crew member Tawana, you can put her quote up, please, from Miss Tawana Williams so we can see her comment. Thank you. Tawana has shared, and I appreciate you being so candid and transparent, my darling. I have been unemployed for 4 months now. Now, this again, if you know anecdotally, there are several people I know within my circles sometimes that find it difficult. It also depends on what type of work that you do, depending on whether you're licensed or whether you are in a professional or if you are in an unlicensed, type of line of work. What is available to you might differ also geographically speaking. depending on where you live in terms of being in a economic center or a very metropolitan area versus being in a more rural area, etc. But overall, this is not good for the wealth gap. As a whole, Black people have already are already trying to make up ground for where we are lacking in terms of home ownership, in terms of paying down debt and actually having, net wealth, right? After we pay all our bills, that we actually have assets that are more valuable than our debts. So if we continue to see this trend, unfortunately, it is going to have a dire impact and a long-term impact, not only on that individual, as I said, with families going forward. We'll take a few more quotes. Let's see if we can get a couple more responses, but I would like to go to break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the announcement by Dr. Cornel West. We'll have more of the culture right after this break.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture. Big shout out to my sister, Suzette Speaks. Let's bring her into the frame. Woo! Suzette.
Just hitting a little bit, but glad you're here, sir.
Man, oh man, I appreciate you for kicking us off on the show today. So welcome, folks. It's good to see you. Big shout out to the crew checking in today on YouTube as we stream them live right there. And of course, on Black Star Network and, of course, on Amazon News. Suzette, thank you so much again, sis. I can always count on you for coming through in the clutch. So I appreciate you for that. Great conversation that Suzette had, talking a little bit about those numbers around unemployment. But we want to shift gears now to talk about what's going on in the political space. A big announcement was made, Suzette. And this is an announcement that it took some people by surprise, which is the announcement of Dr. Cornel West, who is known who is an author, he's a scholar, he's a researcher, he's a historian. He's a very vocal voice in the larger platform and on the landscape. But he has officially announced that he's running for president of the United States. Folks, I want to play his announcement video for you that he posted on his Twitter page, and let's jump into the discussion about his campaign to be president. Take a look at this.
In these bleak times, I have decided to run for truth and justice, which takes the form of running for president of the United States as a candidate for the People's Party. I enter into quest for truth. I enter into quest for justice. And the presidency is just one vehicle to pursue that truth and justice, what I've been trying to do all of my life. I come from a tradition where I care about you. I care about the quality of your life. I care about whether you have access to a job with a living wage, decent housing, women having control over their bodies, health care for all, de-escalating the destruction of the planet, the destruction of American democracy. Democracy creates disruption. It creates an eruption. It creates an interruption. Wide from below, the energies of everyday people is manifest. And I know there are precious people in your life who you care for. That's why it's important for you to be involved, important for you to participate. We're not talking about hating anybody. We're talking about loving. We're talking about affirming. We're talking about empowering those who have been pushed to the margins, because neither political party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, about Ukraine, about the Pentagon, about big tech. Neo-fascists like Brother Trump or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden. Wow, I'm so happy to make a world-shaking decision. You know what I mean? Well, I know gangsters when I see them. And gangster's not a subjective expression. It's an objective condition. Do we have what it takes? We shall see. But some of us are going to go down fighting, go down swinging with style and a smile, accenting the best in you and trying to tease out the best in me. Let's do it together.
All right, that was Dr. Cornel West making an official, Suzette, that he's planning to run for the president of the United States. Now, he's actually running as a representative of the People's Party, and I'm asking the question, is he a viable alternative candidate? Is he a viable alternative candidate? I had to have this conversation with you because you're like my political sis.
You know, well,
Suzette, what you take of this? What you make of this?
I may be a little bit biased again because I have worked and continue to work on behalf of Democrats. So I want to put that out there in full disclosure. But I love the announcement just in terms of stylistically. First and foremost, the debates are going to be fire when Cornel West expound upon in his eloquent manner, you know, the real issues that he cares about. So first and foremost, I want to pay, you know, full respect to who has become really an American icon in terms of, you know, his academic prowess. You know, of course, now he's at Union Seminary, Theological Seminary, has taught at, you know, the big Ivy League schools and has been at the forefront of American, what should I say, civil rights critique for the last many decades. So just as a heavyweight in his academic and philosophical pursuits and career. I have to really, show him respect in that regard. So I want to start there. As far as him deciding to run for president, I don't think a lot of people really expected this. And this came as quite a surprise. Now, for some of us, we are wondering, again, as he says, don't call him a spoiler. I watched an interesting interview with him after this announcement on another platform, talking about he's not a spoiler. You should not critique, smaller parties who are less funded. Instead, you should critique, as he just said in his announcement, the vanilla, as he says, liberalism that is not as, and I'm paraphrasing him, as galvanizing to the American people. And as you've said with our discussions in the past on this platform, why not something new? Why not something different? Again, I don't know about the viability of his candidacy when it comes to, getting on the ballots in every state. Again, that takes money and it takes, political infrastructure. The People's Party is actually on a few state ballots right now.
Right.
But that's going to be like his first order of business. But I do think it allows him, to me, he's to the Democrats right now what I see Chris Christie is for the Republicans, like that loud bullhorn, figuratively speaking, that will call people out and will, hold people's feet to the fire, during, like I said, debates, public discussions, and allow for new ideas to pour into the public discourse. Now, again, is he going to end up being a spoiler? Who is his target audience? Those are questions I think we really have to ask as to who will be moved by him and his message. But I do think, this just makes the 2024 field, which keeps growing, by the way, more and more are joining, just, that much more interesting.
Absolutely. So there are a couple of things I think that we kind of have to consider here. And I'm going to say this point, then we got to take another pause. A couple of things is that he said he's running with Truth and Justice serving as the foundation of his campaign. And I think that appeals not just to Black people. I think that appeals to whites. I think it'll appeal to Latinos. I think it would be a multiracial, broad coalition of folks that want to see things happen. And I think that what sticks out for him versus what we've seen with, and I don't even want to call him a spoiler. I don't want to use the term for Dr. West like that, because he's done too much. He's brought too much to the table in terms of scholarship and understanding for us to see him as the guy who just wants to ruin the presidential election. I think that what he's doing, and Corinna, you checked in and said this, that it's a strategic move. And I think it is strategic, because I think he's forcing us to think outside of the box. I don't think anybody can doubt that when he gets up on the stage, he is going to bring points to the conversation that a lot of people either are thinking or wish that they said, right? He's going to bring it. And he's going to bring it with history. He's going to bring it with scholarship. He's going to bring it with research. He's going to make the other candidates look silly in a lot of ways. But I think his big thing that he will have to overcome is just people taking him seriously. Now, he has, if you take a look at the campaign video, he was actually like an ally with Bernie Sanders. And so some of his politics comes from that place. But I'm saying, like, in terms of breaking through some of the walls that we've often seen with new candidates or candidates that represent, outside the independent or People's Party or the Green Party or anything like that, I think he's a strong candidate. I think he's a strong candidate. And guess what? Very quickly, there's got to be an art to the disruption. He says about disruption and interruption, there's an art and science to disruption. And if nothing else, it will force us as Black America, for us to ask ourselves, do we want to just go along to get along, or do we want to disrupt to create the change that we say we see? That's all I'm gonna say about that. That's the view I think he's trying to take. That it has to think we can't just go along to get along. And I think all of us, if we're honest with one another, no one wants to see Biden Trump again. This is not a boxing match. This is the political future of the country. And this is not a joke. It's not about personality. It's not about who you like. this is very serious business. So we have to consider all of those things. Look, I got to take a quick pause, Suzette. I know you got much more to say, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to say it. Crew, I want y'all to join us in the conversation as we're talking about Dr. Cornel West has officially announced his presidency for the United States. Is he a viable alternative candidate? What's your take? Post your comments on our YouTube chat as we're streaming live there. And, of course, we're streaming on Black Star Network and Amazon News. Stay with us, folks. You're tuned into the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the big announcement coming from Dr. Cornel West, as he has officially announced earlier this week that he is planning to run for president of the United States. I've been chatting it up with my sister, Suzette Speaks, who's an attorney, TV host, and host of her own show on YouTube. Make sure y'all subscribe. And we've been talking about the implications of this. Is Dr. West a viable alternative candidate, as he's going to be representing the People's Party for his campaign? So many of you have been checking in, and so I want to bring Suzette back into the screen here. And also, Suzette, let's talk about what our crew has been saying. Pretty Brown Mimi 726. Mimi, thank you for checking in. She said, Dr. West is an uber intellectual. He's political. He's spiritual. He's got a shot.
Well, love Mimi. But yeah, I think let's say positive, one of the ways in which he can influence the race is that I don't think anyone has any doubt that he places the Black experience as his primary lens for how he discusses America. And I think he will pull the Democrats or force them into discussions that they have had the privilege of being able to kind of sidestep, oh, yes, we are concerned about that, but you're not doing anything about it. So I do like the fact that, again, if he is invited to the debate stages and if he is kind of included in some of that on the ground, door-to-door grassroots politics, that we can hear from him ideas that need to be pushed to the fore. I think that is going to be a promising aspect of his campaign. Now, as far as whether he'll be even as popular, say, even as a Bernie Sanders or someone like this who was, thinking about or chose to run third party and got a good modicum of support, I think that is left to be seen. For some circles, Dr. West is considered to be controversial, right? Because he speaks very boldly about the issues, in the Middle East and other issues of war and really capitalism as a whole, as being a destructive, not capitalism itself, but corporate greed as being a destructive force in society. So there's going to be a lot of pushback. A lot of people don't want his brand of philosophy and social critique to be mainstream. But I think there is an advantage to having him, among he considers himself a communist, actually, but among the candidates that are more to the left, that can bring some ideas that need to be discussed to the forefront.
So there's a big conversation right now, Suzette, in the chat where people are saying, well, why doesn't he run for Senate? Tiana, you checked in and you said Dr. West should run for the Senate. Who else did I see? Janelle, you said if Dr. West wants to make a difference for our community, why isn't he running for Congress or Senate? And I wonder, and Tiana, Janelle, I love y'all, appreciate y'all, but I always wonder, why do we want to diminish somebody's ambitions? Why do we want to say, okay, let's be realistic? Because how many of us would have thought a senator by the name of Barack Obama would have had a chance to be the president of the United States?
This is true. And sometimes
I'm really, I'm being, this is not being facetious or trying to be mean spirited. I'm saying seriously, if you lived in the state of Illinois and you saw a young dude, this dude was young, and you were like, oh, he's a nice guy. He got some good ideas, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, yeah, I'm running for president. He didn't even, if I'm remembering correctly, Suzette, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I don't even think he did his full term as a senator for the state of Illinois.
Nope, he did not. And
he went from half of a term.
Yes.
He went from the minor leagues to the major leagues, and it was from high school to the pros.
Right.
So I don't know if we can still use that, if that is a strong, I don't know how much of a weight that plays that somebody said, well, why don't you? Because see, that's the stuff that we often hear from liberal whites, from some other black folks, that people say the same things that they said to Dr. King and to others. Why are you talking about Vietnam War? Why don't you stay in your lane where you have? And those are the moments. Those are the times, those are the decisions that take somebody from a place of comfort to a place of purpose, because now you stepping out there on faith. And I'm not mad at Dr. West for saying, you know what, I'm gonna run for president of the United States. He's been on the public scene for years. Yeah. We all know about him. He's been very critical. He's been on the scene for years. So I'm not necessarily saying, well, why don't you start going up the ladder? Because guess what? White candidates don't go up the ladder. They don't. They jump right into it. Mm-hmm. They don't go from city council person or alder person to city council president or that person, and then they work out. No. Not in today's political space. Bloomberg, he went from billionaire to mayor to to running for president. You know what I'm saying? Trump.
Carly Fiorina. I can tell you several people come from business and other areas to go straight to the presidency. Absolutely. Your point.
Right. So I'm not sure if that is the path thing. I think that we say, I think we get a lot of people get caught up in the rank and file of politics. But, this is not a rank and file political space that we find ourselves in this country, Suzette. You know what I'm saying? We can't think about tepid moves. We got to think boldly.
Yeah, times have definitely shifted.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that by him not taking that path, that is going to be a strike against him?
No, I think this raises his profile, and I don't think he's doing it for that reason.
No, I don't think so either.
He is a national figure for many across different ethnicities, racial groups, communities across our country know about him. He's a prolific, like a writer, author, etc. Teaches religion, and again, a foremost thought leader in this country when it comes to gender, when it comes to race, and so much more. So when I think about what can end up happening, I think it's why a lot of people, not necessarily him, do join in these races, because oftentimes when they say you shoot for, the stars, if you don't get there, you'll land on the moon. Oftentimes, these names stay in the mix when it comes to, for example, cabinet positions, when it comes to, not saying necessarily for him, but even vice president or other positions of importance when it comes to the administration who ends up winning. So just being in these circles, people also can get a lot more exposure when it comes to speeches and collecting speaking fees and doing a lot more projects come to you when you are in the limelight or when you are now a major candidate in an election. So I think there's a lot more benefit to him being there, to him personally. Not, again, I don't think that is his direct intent behind running, but I do think for him, whether he, ends up, staying on the ballot in most states or even gets on the ballot on most states, it doesn't hurt his profile. It actually helps to raise it.
So here's the other thing, and I'm gonna take a quick pause after this because Janelle, you talking to me from the chat, and I appreciate you. Now I think you bring up some great points. You said, Farajii, presidents don't make policy; they sign after the work is done. Obama didn't change policy as president; he fell in line. He might have more of a policy impact as a lawmaker. That's all well and true. But when Obama when he said he was announcing his run for president, none of us in Black America was thinking about none of that.
None at all.
Let's keep the criteria the same, because the change is based upon who you talk to. None of that mattered in Black America. Nobody. I mean, very few. Look, y'all remember? And I'm talking about 2008. Do you remember that when Dr. Cornel West became critical with Barack Obama? It was him and Brother Tavis Smiley. They became critical of Barack Obama. Boy, that created a firestorm. If y'all remember that, y'all were like, oh my God, they trying to stop the first Black president. Blah, 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 blah. They became critical because Dr. West, and I'm not saying this, look, I'm just remembering history. We got to think about all sides of this. We are talking about a criteria, like either we put the best, like Barack Obama is one of the most brilliant intellectuals that we have in the political space. Highly brilliant, came from Harvard. He's done the whole thing. And there were people who literally said he wasn't qualified to be president, even though he was at the top of his class. He was part of the law review and all of the great things he was able to accomplish in school. He was not. So what's the criteria? The criteria is that you got to know policy. You got to understand the system. You've got to go through 20 years of being, because that wasn't applied to Barack Obama. We voted for Barack Obama and we put that man in office because we were excited, because not only was he brilliant, he was charismatic, and he gave us a sense of purpose and a future that we all believed in. That's the change that we all grappled onto when we saw him. So okay, whether you think he did enough or he didn't do enough, that's a different story. The thing is, initially, nobody really checked Barack Obama that much. We couldn't be critical of Barack Obama. We could not be critical. And if we were critical, Black America would whip your ass. Okay, nobody questioning that.
Farajii, that's why I don't even believe that Dr. West necessarily has Black America on lock. I'm just saying that.
Right. He may not. People may remember he was critical of Barack Obama.
That whole point you just made. Exactly. I think we got to take a quick break, but yes, exactly.
So I don't know, but I think that if we're talking about it, and I'm saying, as much as we want to see change, when will the change happen, Suzette? That's the big question for me. As much as we say, well, we can't go back to the old, we got to think something out the box. And then when an out of the box option comes up, we're like, So maybe we should kind of fall back a little bit. We move it too fast. What is it that we want? Do we want to see change? Do we want to disrupt the system? Do we want to go boldly like Star Trek where no man or woman has gone before? Or do we want to go along, get along, continue to talk about the issues and not really have any real discourse about a different future, an uncertain future, a future that even though we might be afraid of, that this is still a future that we can say, okay, I got faith because we're doing something differently. Something has to change, folks. That's all I'm saying, Suzanne. When does that start?
Absolutely. I hear you loud and clear. Maddie's going to kill us if we don't take a quick break.
We got to take a break. Look at you.
Thank you.
He went from contributor to host already, y'all. Let's take a quick pause. Stay with me. It's the culture. Yeah. Look at they switch sides and everything. All right. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network. Stay with us.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Make sure y'all do your due diligence and continue to support us here at Black Star Network as we continue to have these conversations. There you go. Take a look right there, folks. Black Star Network, we need your support. Your financial support means everything. Of course, we want you to give whatever you can, but you also support us by just downloading the app for free on all of your smartphones and devices. And, of course, follow us on social media. But let folks know that Black Star Network is here and we're here to stay, and we got a lot to say here on the platform. So, again, continue to support us here at Black Star Network. All right, folks, I wanted to have a separate conversation because I know this Dr. West conversation is going to continue to happen over the next few weeks as the campaigns start to ramp up across on both sides of the aisle. But we want to bring your attention to another story that has gotten the national spotlight. This is about the woman in Florida who was accused of fatally shooting her neighbor after a dispute involving the victim's children. The big update from this story is that yesterday, according to the authorities, the woman, Susan Louise Lorenz, who was 58, she was charged with manslaughter with a firearm in the shooting death of Ajike Owens, 35 years old, according to the Marion County Sheriff's Office. He said in a statement earlier today, Ms. Lorenz was also charged with culpable negligence, battery, and 2 counts of assault. And this is based on an altercation that Ms. Owens and Ms. Lorenz had, verbal altercation that led to the shooting because of a misunderstanding that there was a missing piece of property coming from that was taken by Ms. Owens, by Ms. Lorenz. And as a result of that, when Ms. Owens tried to address the situation because that piece of property belonged to her son, things just went from bad to worse. Let me bring my sister Suzette back into this situation because this is a really tragic story. You and I talked about this earlier this morning. Very tragic story where this sister lost her life because of something that this other woman was wrong in doing.
Absolutely, Farajii. This one really hits home, not just because I'm from Florida, but I'm looking at, again, another innocent life that was robbed by someone who overreacted in the situation. As you stated, we have 2 individuals. Again, some background facts I want to give, in addition to what you just shared, is that her mom says Ajike Owens is how it's pronounced. Ajike Owens was a 35-year-old mother of 4. Her children's name, as her mother shared during a press conference, I encourage everybody to go look at Monday's press conference that was held at the church in Ocala. Isaac, Israel, Africa, and Titus. Why I'm giving you the 4 children's names is because one of them, the 9-year-old, was with her when she was shot, standing in front of this person's doors, Susan Larick. I'm so glad we had an arrest. Again, this all occurred on Friday, June 2nd at around 9 p.m. As Farajii explained, there was a dispute. Now, apparently, next to an apartment complex, there is an open area, open grassland, if you will, where children play. So this is not the first instance where the police were called or there has been a record of some sort of dispute with this alleged perpetrator, Susan Larick, and the neighborhood kids. So they play in this field. She gets upset. At the time that evening, Miss AJ is what she goes by, Owens' children were playing in that field. Susan Larick came out. According to the children, that's what deputies were waiting on to make an arrest because they have to have evidence that this was not a stand your ground scenario. But the children eventually gave statements to law enforcement where, according to their testimony or according to their statements, I should say, they were playing around. This woman comes out, says, "Get off of my property," essentially, but starts using words that were not appropriate for children to hear. She starts calling them the N word, the B word, according to Ajike's mom, and calling them slave and other things. She took some are saying, some kind of tablet from one of the kids. The kid is now trying to, find out why are you taking this from me? She throws a skate at him, according to some reports. And instead of responding himself, he does what any child would do. He goes to his mom, Ajike, and says, "Mommy, this is what happens." So this 35-year-old woman trying to figure out what actually happened and why a grown 58-year-old woman would be throwing anything at her child or removing his property from him, goes to the door. And it is a locked door, again, closed door. We've heard this scenario before, Farajii, in many cases as of late, where she goes to knock on the door. She was not armed. She did not, in my opinion, pose a threat at that time. Knocked several times on a closed door. And Susan Larick's response, this 58-year-old white woman shoots through the door, hitting Ajike in the chest. 911 was called. Police arrive on the scene there after 9 p.m. Saw that the now deceased Miss AJ Owens had been shot in the chest. She was rendered aid. Of course, she did not live. But this seems again like another tale that, we've kind of heard already when it comes to this kind of vigilante. I wouldn't even call it justice, because it wasn't justified. It was an unjustifiable shooting of this woman. And again, there is a racial element in the story, as the mother and her children were Black, and this woman happens to be white. And what was said to the children leading up to the interaction that led to Ajike Owens' death is going to be very, very pertinent to this story. But that's where we are. An arrest was just made yesterday. I'm glad that they, according to Florida sunshine laws, though, they have laws here where you have to release, things like the mugshot. It was taking a while. We're like, where's her face? Every time there's another, perpetrator of a different race, you always see their face right away. But now we're seeing in the press, the mugshot, her perp walk, and other things, as she has now, been charged. So we've seen this type of story a lot as of late, where someone is doing something they deem to be reasonable, but the other person reacts unreasonably and takes a life.
This is why I think that it's important for us to be heard and to be knowledgeable about these things for a case like this with Sister Ajike Owens. Just because part of this, and you and I talked about this, is that part of this is what we saw similar in the Ralph Yarl case, where the police were very slow to bring Miss Lori to justice, or to even go, even arrest her. And so that community pressure, social media pressure, political pressure added to it. But it doesn't bring me any peace. Even though she's arrested, it still doesn't bring me peace, because we're starting to see more and more of these incidents when somebody walks to the door, then gunfire breaks out. 2, does that mean that we need to be on top of the police to do their damn job all the time, right? And then 3, the third thing that sticks out for me is looking at this situation. What protection will be given to any victim or the victim's families when they have to deal with an incident like this? What protection?
Yeah, I think there is going to be both a criminal and civil case in this incident, because what I'm looking at, and shout out to one of the family attorneys, Benjamin Crump, who again, through his social media is how I even became aware that this had occurred, that have, put the pressure on so that the sheriff and the prosecutors could not look away. And I think even in terms of what the sheriff's statement said recently, he commented on why it took a few days and that he had to do a thorough investigation to make sure there were proper grounds to arrest her. And it wasn't a stand your ground case, and that he didn't interview the children right away. Of course, this was highly traumatic to be a 9-year-old standing beside your mother who takes a bullet through a locked door. And you see her, fall to the ground after being slain in that way. I can understand what he's saying in terms of making sure they had time to kind of digest what had happened so that they can provide adequate statements. Nonetheless, the way it has been handled so far, again, stand your ground is the law of the land here in Florida. This does not seem as if this, obviously due to the arrest, fell within that purview of stand your ground. What I find interesting in this case, Farajii, is there has been a history between this lady and her neighbors, not just Ajike and her kids, but other people have come forward and given interviews I've been watching on social media that have also stated that she was, in fact, some have called it harassing the neighborhood kids, etc. But as far as what she should have done is to call, if she felt her life was in imminent danger, as she claims to the attorney, she should have called police. But again, we see that there is a justification in some folks' minds that this is the type of force that can be used against Black bodies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more conversation about this unfortunate story and what do we take from it, folks. We continue to talk about the case of Ajike Owens, the mother of 4 who was shot and killed by a neighbor for simply trying to settle a dispute. She was shot through the door down in Florida, and it seems like this is more, and this is happening more and more. There is a great, and this is going to be the next part of the discussion, what's going to happen after July 1st when folks from Florida are checking in, Corinna and others, saying, look, open carry is going to be the law of the land in the state of Florida starting July 1st. What will be the outcome of this situation? We got a lot to talk about. Folks, stay with us. You're tuned into The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about the case of Ajike Owens, the young woman, the mother of four who was shot and killed for simply trying to resolve an issue that she had with a disruptive neighbor. Ajike, as you can see there, a sister who had four children, who was a woman who was just trying to be a mother, trying to address a situation, and as a result of it was fatally shot by her neighbor through the door, folks, through the door. Does that sound familiar? And so this is all happening down in Florida. And very quickly, I know time is of the essence for us on this side, Suzette, but I want to get your take on, you know, the concern that people in the chat and other folks who may be watching, what you think will happen come July the 1st when it's going to be put into policy, or the policy will be enacted rather, that folks can walk around open carry. It's going to be a choice that can be made in Florida. What's your take on that? How should folks, given these incidents, and a lot of, unfortunately, we've been hearing a lot more of these incidents down in Florida, but there are certainly some in other states. But given these incidents, how do you think that's going to play out now with this policy coming into action?
Yeah, I think this is why we talked about it last show, Farajii, the importance of voting and changing the dynamic of our Florida state legislature, our Florida House and Florida Senate. Right now, as I've stated before on this program, they are really ran by Republicans in the fashion of having a supermajority. So Democrats, although present, they don't need any Democratic votes to pass anything. So our state legislature thought this was a good idea to present a law signed by Governor Ron DeSantis that will go into effect July 1st to allow open carry, permitless carry in the state of Florida. I've had so many conversations with people who have been longtime residents here, various economic backgrounds, various ethnicities, all kinds of, walks of life. And it is very disturbing. A lot of people are frightened by the prospect of gun violence becoming the norm. Of course, we've had our issues here in Miami, where I am, and across, our metropolitan centers. But to think now that people are not going to have a background check is quite frightening. As I've worked in state agencies, for example, where the licensing offices are for permits where they're given in the last administration pre this new order in Tallahassee. 20 and 30,000 people were denied gun licenses. Now, as of July 1st, they won't even have to get any background check or approval to own them. So for good reason, they were denied in the past, but that is no longer the law. So this puts Florida, in a whole different light for those who are visiting us, as well as those of us who live here, and our safety is now really in the balance.
And that's crazy. That is crazy. Just to think about that, from 20, 30,000 being denied to probably the numbers have dropped to almost damn near zero at this point. That is absolutely crazy, and it's very scary. Let me go to check in with the crew. How's the weather with Pretty KK? You checked in. You said vote, LOL, nah, love, unity, and power, support, and protection with our race and culture. Why would you ever think voting would help? I think that how's the weather with Pretty KK is speaking from some parts of our communities, Suzette, that this is not just about voting. This is about protection. This is about love. This is about for us to understand that we as a people, not just a community, but as a people, as a nation within a nation, that we have to think about something very different here on how to address this problem, such as this open carry law and other dangers that really threaten our livelihoods. You can't just say vote, vote, vote unless there's some other stuff that happens, along with that. Voting is one strategy, but it can't be the only strategy. What other recourse, whether it's legal recourse, community activism, development, organizing, whatever the case, what other recourse do Black Floridians have in this case?
Well, again, I completely disagree with that as a premise, because I think we're in this position because of that very attitude. And again, I respect a difference of opinion, but if we're not in the political process, the political process still will be dictated by others who have, various stances on issues just like this one and gun ownership, and how now you do not need any type of background check or permit to have a gun in Florida based on the widening of this law is just really, par for the course of what I think is a result of a lot of people feeling kind of the same way, right? Disengaged, disenfranchised, not feeling that they matter in this political system. Yes, you can protest in the street, but there's still laws because other people voted and made the people who were elected, kind of do what they wanted in terms of their political beliefs. And if we sit on the sidelines and we continue to say, okay, I don't see an economic boycott having an impact here. Yes, you could protest in Tallahassee. It's still going to be run by Republicans because of gerrymandering and other things that are going on in terms of our, which I say, grassroots infrastructure. When it comes to Democrats, people just, if we look at Georgia as a case study, when you look at now the changes that are occurring within their leadership, it's not because it just magically happened. There were people who planned and organized, a la Stacey Abrams and others, who eventually convinced others, like my sister who just made the comment, to get involved and to participate in the process. I don't see a way around that. And then 10 years later, 20 years later, you're calling Georgia purple and perhaps blue. Florida lacks that infrastructure right now. That infrastructure takes volunteers. If we want to talk about volunteerism within our community and trying to get people engaged, that's one way about it. But the real way is that there has to be political infrastructure, a la money has to be spent here by the larger national party, as well as other support organizations that help contribute to getting feet on the ground to get people better engaged. And I think that has not happened when we talked about it last week. And when we talk about why Floridians not as engaged, Black Floridians in specific, is because a lot of that grassroots infrastructure is not yet built the way that, like, for example, I said, Georgia has been built up over the last several years. So yes, we can say unity, but somebody has to get involved in the political process because that ball still keeps rolling in their direction if we're not involved.
Absolutely. I want to take this before we take our next pause, 30 seconds into this one, Suzette, because I know you also work in a space of working with women who have been in violent situations, whether it's domestic situations or just violent circumstances in general. Marcina Faith Albert, you checked in and said this is going to affect Black women who have been victims of domestic violence. Taking this open carry, taking the larger climate right now. How do you agree with the Marcina on this one or no?
Absolutely, because there are going to be very few exceptions where people will not be allowed to obtain a weapon. So those type of laws that kind of gave waiting periods and things like this, a lot of that has changed. Again, you have to look at where you are in terms of where the broadening has occurred. But for the most part, and again, I speak very carefully because I'm an attorney as well. I'm not telling you to just go get a gun in Florida. Look at the law, but for the most part, all of these different, safeguards that had been, like if you had certain type of convictions, if you had, other issues, domestic violence being one of them, there were limitations. Now it's much more broader. So yes, I do agree. It's going to disproportionately impact Black communities as a whole in Florida. But specifically, when it comes to Black women who are victims of domestic violence, it's going to also have a deleterious impact. But yeah, like I said, get involved in the process.
You know what? And really quickly, we got to figure out how to get Black Floridians engaged.
Money.
I'm serious, because I'm listening. Hey, Suzette, I'm listening, but I'm listening to you. Yeah. I hear frustration. I hear pain. I hear a lot. I hear your passion, but I hear the greatest emotion is frustration. You have shown your frustration around this issue, and I understand because I can only imagine. So when you got all these forces against you, and then you got Black folks who are just like, "Hey man, I'm just here for Disney and the sunshine."
And don't vote. We win.
And don't vote.
What? I don't get
you
it.
You want the beaches. You want Disney World. You want all of the other trappings of Florida, but hey, in them palm trees, the blood of our people are running through the streets
every day. I can't even get into the history of Miami, but yes. This is all right. So I'm very passionate about it. But I just feel like, again, there's a lot of people that sound like that. To me, that sets us back, and I think that's the education piece that we have to do by knocking on doors, by paying for volunteers. People don't understand. Politics is oftentimes paid volunteers to go door to door to get people. Now, I could go so far with this project. I know we got to take a break. But the law, the same laws that we don't want to pass now, used to have absentee ballots roll over. You signed up for it 1 year and you roll over. It goes 2 or 3 election cycles. Now, everybody who signed up for an absentee ballot in Florida, it has been wiped clean. So if you have not re-registered when this law passed, you're no longer registered. A lot of people are used to, you got 2 and 3 voting cycles to get a ballot basically at your house, right? But now we have to now focus on re-educating people to re-sign up on their county websites, their supervisor of elections websites, to get your absentee ballot, because a lot of people are going to expect to get them. There are all kinds of tricks of the trade going on here, right? Through the legislature that has the power to vote. But if we think we're going to sit on the sidelines and it's going to change, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. All right, folks, we got to take another pause. When we come forward, let's shift gears. Let's talk about Cardi B and how she made her recent statements gotten some people just upset. She said that in essence that being rich is boring. We're going to have a conversation, not about her money, but talking about the larger picture of this idea that we think that money is going to solve our problems, when in fact, it may not. We'll have that conversation. We'll be checking in with my sister, Cherie Nicole, to get her insight about this as well. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. Man, the chat has been on fire today. So many new voices, new faces, great comments, different perspectives. I absolutely love it. Let's keep it coming, folks, because this conversation is something that I've been thinking about. I've certainly been thinking about, but I'm so happy to be joined by my sister, Suzette Speaks, who was always giving her brilliant insight onto things. But I'm also going to be joined in a moment by another dynamic Black woman. She is a producer. She is a life coach. She is a podcast host. Y'all should definitely check her out on all her social media as Cherie Nicole. And she's also a co-host on the Willie Moore Jr. Show, the nationally syndicated radio show where they talk about everything on there. Definitely close to the heart and to the spirit. I want to welcome to the airwaves of The Culture here on the Black Star Network, my sister Cherie Nicole. Cherie, thank you for joining us this afternoon. How are you today?
Thank you, Farajii. I am great. And I have to say, it is such a small world. Like, I remember first meeting you in my News One Nowadays at TV One several years ago. So it's just really an honor to see your ascension and for us to be chatting today. I'm too excited.
I'm so excited. And I got my sister, as I mentioned, Suzette Speaks on this piece as well. So I wanted to talk about this comment that Cardi B has made that has got a lot of people upset and kind of in their feeling, and some people feeling very dismissive of her and what she has to say. But I think there is something to this, and that's why I'm happy to have both you and Suzette Cherie joining us for this conversation. Here's what Cardi B had recently said. She was responding to some tweets about her new song that she did with Lotto, put it on the floor. And somebody had brought up the fact that why would you work so hard to get out of the hood, but only to glorify waving guns in your videos and talking about the hood life and basically going back to the thing you said you wanted to get out from. And this is what she said. Take a look at this. Here's the quote. They said, okay, last thing, when is Cardi going to transition to full millionaire? Like, why are you posting with guns and things in the Put It On The Floor Again remix video? This is what a Twitter user asked. They added, who escapes the hood just to relive it every chance they get? Ouch. She said, you want to know what's crazy? Cardi begins her reply She said, I was tearing the other day because I miss my old life. She went on to claim sometimes having everything gets boring, adding, but I won't complain. It's not about me anymore. This is part of growing up and about my kids. She finished her response with, but yeah, put it on the floor. All right, so Cherie, I want to start with you. You said I want to get your take.
Okay, couple things.
Now, Cherie, I have watched your videos. Y'all should definitely check her out on Instagram because she got these great conversations and she doing her thing. But something that came to my mind is like, I really feel like we are at a big awakening in this country right now, Cherie, where people are starting to see, and I'm speaking of Black folks, I'm speaking of high-profile, influential, rich Black people are starting to realize that all the things that we have been wanting, the things that we have been told will take us into another place, really doesn't do much to feed us. Yeah. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, it doesn't do much. That just because you have a lot of money does not mean that you're happy with who you are and with the circumstances you in. And I know it might sound crazy, but I think Cardi B was just trying to keep, we always talk about how real she is. I think she's very real about this. She's like, this is not what I expected.
I think she was being very real, and I also just think she used the wrong word. It's not boredom, it's unfulfilled. And to your point, Farajii, it's simply this. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're using that as a means to be able to have, as you mentioned, a quality of life that serves your spirit, your soul, your mental health, your emotional and spiritual well-being, then you're fooling yourself. And so the thing that I appreciate is that you're now allowing us to have a conversation and communicate about what she's saying versus some people who are just being critical about what she's saying. Again, the assumption that money solves all your problems is just incorrect. And so I appreciate Cardi B's authenticity and her transparency here. And also, we also have to understand with progress and progression and elevation, like monetarily or in a professional sphere, you also have to elevate from a mental health perspective. If you're in an environment most of your life that's unbecoming of now where you are as somebody who's considered to be wealthy, what kind of work have you done to build your character to even sustain in that space? And so just because we see people who have money and who have status, we assume that they're sustaining in those spaces when in reality, many of them are not. And that's why many people you see that have money and status, they're depressed or they're isolated, or as she said, bored or what have you. So I appreciate us just thinking about from a ground level, what success really is, how do we define it? And then when we do reach it from a monetary standpoint, how do we sustain it from a holistic standpoint?
But Cherie, that doesn't, and that right there just means that what we have been told, and I'm speaking of Black folks, I'm talking about within our culture, within our community, that goes against everything that we have been told.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We function from a scarcity mentality. So when you function like that, you don't leave.
Don't you're making me think about Gabrielle Union now. Lord,
I'm just saying, because when you do that, you set the stage for what we're talking about. So it goes back to what's happening, and we can even go deeper when we talk about how our families have been desecrated, the Black family, and we look at those structures and how those have now been compromised. We're not even having conversations with young people about how you build towards a life of success and all the things that encompass that. And then our young people are looking at television and they're looking at the music videos and they're listening to the music or watching the movies and television shows. And they're defining success simply by what we're talking about: money, status, women, sex, all these other things that don't fulfill a person. So we have to go back to the ground level and talk about what fulfills your soul, what fulfills you as a person, so that you can enjoy these things. So it's a lot of levels to this. That's why I got excited when you guys said you want to talk about this. Because I'm we can talk about this for days.
Look, I got to take a quick pause, and this is that I want to get your take, because adding to what Cherie talked about, I feel like we are in a soul-serving season. I want to say that to everybody again.
Good.
Let's go. Let's say this to everybody. We are in a soul-serving season, which means that I don't think any one of us, I think we're all going through this period of wiping the scales from our eyes, as the book says, and seeing reality for what it really is instead of what we have been conditioned to believe it is, right? Like all of us. everything from money to our connection and relationship to God and the Creator, to our relationships. Like, we are all seeking something that's going to serve the soul. And I want to talk about that because, again, I'm not mad at Cardi, but there are still some people within our community, within the culture, that says, hey, man, we need to hold on. Economic mobility, economic prosperity, upward, all of these things. And I'm getting to the place of none of that matters. None of this actually matters until you're talking about being a whole, healed human being. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, look, let me get your take on this. As we talk about Cardi B, we talk about her being bored with her riches. And what's your take? Are we in a soul-serving season? Is this place that we find ourselves in, that now the things that we all have been chasing, getting that paper, is not worth it? Join me in the conversation. Post your comments on YouTube and continue to tune in as we are streaming live from Black Star Network and Amazon News. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about Cardi B and her controversial comments about her being bored with her riches. Yeah, she says she misses her old life, where there's some struggle and some pain, some ups and downs. Not to say she's not experiencing none of that now, folks, but it's just on a different level. She says when you get everything that you want, it gets boring. So many of y'all are checking in. Pauline, you said, I would like to have them problems. No, you said that, Pauline. You said money would solve my problems. All I need is $2 million. Damn, Pauline. Damn. Just $2 million? Okay. I hear that. Yep, I hear that. And people are saying, Pretty Brown Mimi, you said perhaps Cardi B should seek therapy to get to the source of her unhappiness, seek true fulfillment for real. Absolutely. Suzette, I want to bring you into this part of the discussion as we talking to Cherie, Nicole, and yourself. What's your take on this? Do you think that what is this that we're seeing? Because I'm hearing a lot more Black celebrities in particular. We laugh a little bit about Gabrielle Union, but I'm hearing more Black celebrities are like, man, this is getting to be a burden more so than a relief.
Yeah, and shout out to Cherie, Nicole. Pleasure to connect with you, sis. I agree with what you said. I think it's been wonderful in a way for Cardi to take off the mask and say what she really felt, which was that although you guys see the highlight reel of my life, it's not all what it's cracked up to be. I feel, a sense of, and Cherie said unfulfilled. I would say just general dissatisfaction on top of boredom with what you think you're going to get with this money. I think culturally speaking, you're right, Farajii. So much of our big Hollywood people and icons start with that, premise. Denzel Washington, I believe, was quoted in saying, money can't buy happiness, but it's a good down payment. I mean, we hear these type of tropes all the time that seem to allow people to falsely believe that money is like a cure-all. But I really enjoy listening to Jim Carrey and others who have gotten to the other side of making all those millions. Not that I don't want to make all those millions with them, but who has said, I wish everybody could get millions of dollars to realize it's not the answer to you finding happiness and satisfaction and fulfillment and love. So I think when we wake up, or as you talked about, we've begun to wake up as a society. I've done that work with women, having, conferences around the theme of finding inner joy, inner peace, inner happiness. I think this is something that we can never get away from as human beings. As much as we want to somehow, think that some sort of external source is going to give us that feeling of validation, happiness, peace. It more than likely won't come from outside you. It has to come from within you. The type of integrity you have, the love and respect that you have for yourself, that you get from interacting with other people, the joy and all the other parts that go with family life, and understanding oneself in relation to other people is really important. And I think we can never get around that. And I'm glad, she spoke up again. Maybe her phrasing was a little bit odd, and a lot of people came for her, like, give me your money, donate your money. Right. See that, go back to the hood. But yeah, that kind of imagery, specifically in this video, because I was bopping to the song until I saw the video, and I was a little bit scared. Looking at the weaponry, if you will, I was just like, again, the imagery doesn't align, ma'am. That's not your life now. Like, that's really not your life. And so, I mean, and so, do the people who write the music tell them what to put in the video so that it sells, or that we keep it, somewhat, edgy? And now we're going to talk about it because it's controversial to have women holding, semi-automatic weapons and, with the mask on and all this. I'm like, is that the goal, to continue to taint the culture? But I don't know.
And see, Suzette, I'm glad that you brought that up. And Cherie, I want to get your take on that too, because that's what we're seeing. Because guess what? And this is, we keep saying young. The reality is, I see grown-ass men and women who try to mimic this lifestyle.
Yes.
Like, it's just like in the dating space, in the relationship space, a lot of women want a ghost James St. Patrick type of guy. He's a businessman during the day, and he'll kill you at night type of right? It's like but it's like these cultural messages are so strong, right? That here's my concern. And when I'm on social media, Cherie and Suzette, I know y'all both are in the space. I'm on social media and I'm looking at grown ass adults with children, professions, and everything else, acting like they in a damn video, acting like they may have never been in that street life, but they posted up against the car like they on the block or something. It's like, what the hell is going on? Like, how does this speak to our soul, Cherie, to the point where we can pass on something of substance to our children?
The problem is we lack a sense of cultural conscience and cohesion. So then we're taking our directives from these corporate entities. And it's interesting because Suzette was talking about who's telling them to do this. And the mirage is, a lot of us think that these artists have so much free reign to do what they want. But the reality is many of them don't. Many of them are still being controlled by a bigger engine that wants to make sure that Black people don't think for themselves, that we don't come together as culturally, because we're not together. We're just not. So they want to ensure that we function in these silos, and that we have those scales over our eyes, like Farajii mentioned, that cause us to believe that if we have money, if we have guns and things of that nature, we have status. If we're acting bad, shout out to Diddy, or not, that somehow that validates us being amazing and getting the likes and the follows and the clicks. I had a conversation with Darren Henson a couple weeks ago, and he talked about
I saw it.
It's part of the great okie doke. What we don't understand is it still goes back to systemic racism. There are entities above these same people that you're listening to every day and watching and mimicking what they're doing, that are controlling them and ensuring that the content they put out enslaves your mind. And until we have more conversations around that and and the only way to infiltrate that system is for us to culturally come together, not waiting on a Moses, not waiting on a leader, but having these conversations in our homes, in our communities, in our churches, in our schools. That's the key to this problem. And sadly, we're so scattered that part of the reason why we're even having this conversation is because we lack community. We just don't have it. And I'm grateful for platforms like this, conversations like this, to be able to create community, but we need it on a macro scale. And that's what we're missing.
No, and I think that you're absolutely right. Very quickly, I saw the conversation that you had with the brother. I think his name's Kevin Brown.
Keith L. Brown.
Keith
yes.
Brown. Keith Brown. And y'all should check it out because they had this. It stuck with me, and I was like, I got to talk to Cherie about this. Don't lease your peace. Don't lease your peace. And it stuck with me because that's the place that we find ourselves in, right? Like we all are seeking some sort of peace of mind, right? Money can't give us that, quote unquote, necessarily. I'm talking about that deep soul staring inner peace.
Yes.
And I think that, to your point, Cherie, the reason we aren't a community and we don't have this cultural cohesion is because we have never really experienced peace.
Yes, that's so good, Farajii, because in my opinion, and just piggybacking off of what you said, it's easy to give away something you can't define, because if you can't define it, you can't value it. Woo! So that's why a lot of us are giving away our peace, because we don't even know what peace is. And part of it is because, to your point, we haven't done that soul searching, but many of us lack self-awareness because we haven't been taught. That's still a practice. We're not having conversations around it. We may grow up in environments where we don't even have time to try to figure out what peace is. We just got to figure it out and make it from day to day. So it's all these other things that are barriers to entry for us to have peaceful lives, to even know what it means. To what is peace for you? Because it looks different for everybody.
That's right.
Get used to the dysfunction of having dis-ease in our lives, which is not having peace. So anything that really is peace, we don't know what it is anyway. So here, I just got to do what I got to do. So shout out to Keith Brown.
Hey,
big point he made.
Hey, look, that's a great point. Very quickly, we got like a minute left, but one of the big things is that sometimes this is what they call self-sabotage, Cherie and Suzette. I don't know y'all heard this one. Self-sabotage. That when you get into a place when somebody is a peaceful force in your life, you don't want it. And I think Cardi was absolutely right. She was like, these dudes want a toxic chick. It's like we love toxicity. We don't want to admit it, but to some degree, we love disorder and chaos. And that when we finally have the opportunity to gain peace, peace of mind, peace of soul, peace within our families, some of us actually think that's a problem. We question it. We don't think that we're worthy of it. And that is the big part about this. Suzette, you got 30 seconds. What's your take?
I was going to say, it's not, I don't think that we love it. We're not healed from our past toxicity.
Ooh, okay.
So
come on and preach.
Come on now. You're going to replicate what you know. You go back to that comfort zone. You go back and settling into bad habits and bad thoughts and other patterns that don't really serve you, but that's what you know. So when you get that fresh new guy or that new boo and you want to treat her different, or you want to allow her to love you, somebody knows what I'm talking about. You want to love him, but they can't receive love. They can't give love because they never knew love. So I think the biggest message that we can take away from Cardi, inner joy is more important than all, and then working towards healing so that one can walk in their joy and accept their joy, accept their peace, as Farajii is describing, because we don't know what to do with it, because sometimes we are still injured and still broken and still operating on past belief systems and past principles that do not serve us for where we currently are or where we're going to go. So let's heal together.
Absolutely. Cherie, Nicole, I appreciate you so much. Keep doing the great work you're doing. Y'all make sure y'all follow her. What's the best way folks can follow you, Cherie?
You guys can follow me Instagram and Twitter. It's the same handle, at Cherie_Nicole, SHARI_NYCOLE. You can also follow my podcast, Just a Thought with Cherie Nicole, on all digital streaming platforms, including YouTube. So check it out.
There it is right there. And my sister Suzette Speaks. Talk to them.
Hey, y'all know where to find me. No, just kidding. Please look up Suzette Speaks right here on YouTube. You can always follow me on Facebook or Instagram as well. I have just interesting topics that, interest me. And I think it's good to talk about. It's a community space where, we talk back to one another. And I hope you guys will subscribe here on YouTube.
Hey, yo, whatever space you're going to have two dynamic Black women just drop.
I just did. There we go.
Girl, I'm going to follow you too, girl.
There we go. There we go. Making connections, building relationships, having a community while doing it. Cherie, Suzette, thank you, sisters, for being a part of the conversation. And most importantly, thank you for both being so good for the culture.
See you next week.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank you Make sure you do your due diligence. Support us at blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure you continue to support us on all social media platforms. At Black Star Network on Instagram, Twitter, and of course follow me on Instagram and Twitter at The Real Farajii on Instagram and at Farajii on Twitter. Culture Crew, I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for bearing with us for the first part of the show. I want to thank my dynamic production team, King Keenan, Maddie. I want to thank Joel, and of course my control room. And folks, I thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.